Well, the biggest thing about Champ is a very quiet individual. And as talented as he is, you would think he would be more vocal. He would be like other guys. Hey, look at me, look at me.
Hi, and welcome to the Loop Sports Podcast. I'm Payton Craft, joined by former NFL safety and Denver Bronco Nick Ferguson. Today, we're going to dive into Nick's football journey and along with what he's doing after football, because there's always a life after football. So, Nick, your path to the NFL wasn't the typical one. You spent time playing in Canada, even in Europe, before making the league. Can you walk us through kind of how that journey went, and then what was some of the biggest moments you had in that?
Well, you know what? It is one of those types of journeys that you hear about so many people because everyone has their own story. But it is a journey that most guys trying to be a professional athlete probably wouldn't do because at some point you get tired of having the door slammed in your face and someone telling you in whatever way they formulated that you are not good enough. And for me, I was one of those individuals that when you tell me I can't do something, is going to make me do it even more because my phrase that I use, I want to make you choke on your words. I want to make you watch me climb that ladder and you have to see it and then you have to say, "Damn it, I made a mistake." That's what something that everyone should try to pursue as we're trying to be as successful as we can in life. But for me, it was wild because I had to walk on to Georgia Tech. And after walking on to Georgia Tech, I'm thinking, okay, well, I'll play Power Five football. Things will turn around. I'll get some film, and then I'll be able to live out my childhood dream of being a professional athlete. No, life doesn't work that way.
Nope.
It's, it's like, well, let me throw another hurdle in your way to see if you really want this. And then, the NFL, I wasn't drafted. I wasn't invited into any of the postseason bowl games. There was no Senior Bowl. There was no Blue Gray Bowl. I wasn't even invited to the combine in Indianapolis. So I'm thinking, how am I going to make this dream come true when I'm not even invited to the places where they do all the evaluations? So it became difficult for me. And I'll have to say this, going through those rough patches, did I think about quitting? Did I think about giving up? I said, yes, I did. But here's the one thing. See, we only get a chance to live one life in these bodies that we currently have. And the idea is like the saying they had when I was a kid. I mean, you ride it till the wheels fall off. So why not try and fail opposed to not trying at all? Because most people, they run into adversity, they just stop. They don't even try. But at least if you could say that you tried and failed, at least in the back of your mind, if it doesn't happen for you, you can walk away saying, at least I tried. So for me, it was this evolution. It was a consistent will of trying and trying and trying over again. So when things didn't go well for me in the NFL because I was in camp with a couple of teams and I got released, I went to the CFL. And my story is a really interesting one because for 2 years in a row, I played football from NFL Europe to being in NFL training camp to being released there to going to the CFL. That was a hamster wheel of a cycle I did for 2 straight years, right? And
Mhm.
fortunate for me, I thank God because I never got hurt. And if I did, I learned to push through those injuries that would later help me in my NFL career. So it was a tumultuous type of situation for me. But I believe you asked, well, of all of that, well, what was the thing that I guess was the happiest for me? Now, my time with the Broncos, it was great. But for me, it was playing in NFL Europe. And NFL Europe, it's a country that is a soccer country. But I'll tell you, never tell them soccer, right? Because they will get upset with you. But they call it football, we call it soccer. But being over there amongst those fans, they just love, and I love that football soccer culture that they had because even though we were playing in Europe and Barcelona and Berlin and Frankfurt and places like that, they loved American football and they really embraced it. So that was the time where I really came out of my shell and started to become the player that I end up becoming in my NFL career.
Oh, I love that. And you talk about fans. Fans are completely different soccer culture versus here. Like we've seen it, and now the NFL is slowly introducing their games into Europe, which has been a great atmosphere to see the fans participating in that. For Broncos and the teams you've played for, who have been your favorite fans? What's been a moment with the fans that you cannot forget?
Well, you know what? The Broncos fans, for me, are the best. I mean, I played in Houston. I've played in Chicago for a bit, played in New York, and New York fans are a little different. So let me hit on the New York fans for a moment. They are just like the city. It's a blue collar city. It's kind of grimy in your face, and the media, the teams, the fans. That's exactly how they embrace their sports. They anticipate and expect you to win every single moment. When you don't, they're going to criticize the hell out of you. And with the Broncos fans, there's criticism, but it's not as harsh as it would be if you were playing in New York. And for me, is there was a game that we played and it was against the Patriots. It was in the 2005, 2006 season. And that was when we beat the Patriots not once, but twice. And we sent Tom Brady packing. And on that particular day, you can Google it. It's on YouTube. It was Champ Bailey's 100-yard
Yep,
touchdown. He, he,
interception.
he he didn't really make it to the end zone, but let's just say it's 99 yards.
Yep.
But I was a part of that play. It is still one of the NFL's top 100 plays. And I remember that game in Besco Field because that's what it was called when I played. But it was a ruckus crowd, and I had never heard it that loud before. It was so loud that if you were standing maybe 2 feet away from me, you couldn't really hear me. And that was a lot of love and energy from Broncos country. And I remember what it was like when we exit the game and where the tunnel is, there's two sides and there's fans on both sides. And they were going bananas. And back to my Jets days for a second, we used to have issues with the Colts and Tom Brady and the Peyton and Tom Brady and the Patriots. And it wasn't until I came to Denver that we actually competed well with Peyton Manning. We only beat him once, but with Tom Brady, we owned him in Denver, right? So anytime I would always make him aware, I know you got a lot of Super Bowl rings, but those Denver Broncos teams were hell for you.
Hmm.
But seeing the fans and being able to embrace that win and share that with the fans, it was so great. And talk about a high. I mean, that was a high that you didn't want to come down from because it just made you feel so great and it validated everything that you had done. And for me, it validated my entire career because it was a struggle at first, and now we were sitting right there on the precipice of being on a mountaintop.
Yeah. Well, you talk about playing great quarterbacks like Peyton Manning and Tom Brady. For you yourself, what was your mental and physical preparation going into these matchups against these elite quarterbacks?
Yeah, I was kind of ridiculous with it because because the game is about competition, and everyone talks about their hunger to win. So there were games where I intentionally didn't eat, right? So I'm actually playing the game and I'm starving, right? So playing with that mentality, knowing as though I'm starving, it made me play and tackle my opponents with that very hunger and desperation type of feel. And I was kind of I would say, very unique player because I would get to games like hours early where there's no one in the stands because I needed to make sure that I was there because I would always have nightmares. Hell, I even start having now about being late, right?
Yep. I know exactly what dreams you're having. Yes, that's the worst kind of dream.
Yeah. And I still have them now. So, in my idea as a player, if I get there early, then I'm never late, right? And for me, I would walk the field. I would walk on the field. I would kind of visualize what the game was going to be. I would walk through my assignments and try to visualize myself making plays because if I can visualize it when I'm in that situation, then I can already anticipate it and I'm already ready to make plays. So I was kind of, I guess my teammates would say that I was weird. I would say that I was more unique because we all have a way that we prepare for certain things. And preparing for two quarterbacks like that, that's a lot of film study, right? I was a type of player where I didn't really go out that much, right? Some my teammates would call me a nerd or a dork because I didn't hang out. But the way that I looked at it, I was married to the game. That was my girlfriend. That was my wife. And if you are in any relationship, you got to make sure that you stay on point because if you don't, you're going to wreck that relationship. So the game was more important to me than hanging out and maybe chasing women. So for me, my preparation was similar to those guys. I had to watch the film. I had to know exactly how they plan to attack me. And I'm not saying that it always worked, but it gave me an opportunity to be able to compete, not just with those two quarterbacks, but with so many other players as well.
Well, yeah, football is a big part of your life, and I'd call you just over prepared. You can never be too over prepared, and you
Yeah.
can definitely be under prepared. That's for sure.
Right.
But you talked about how it's your life, and that was your life for, as 10 plus years in pros. But after that, what got you into the career and getting into sports media? How did you choose that path? Was it because you just wanted to kind of stay in the scene of football, or was there some other things you might have wanted to pursue afterwards?
You know what? The thing that got me into it was hearing other former players and other people who might have gone to broadcasting school talk about the game. And I just felt as though they were not giving it its just due. And, sports talk, it's like, as my wife would call it, it's male gossip, right?
Yeah.
You said it's just kind of male gossip. But I was just like, well, they're not putting their stories into context. They're being negative or speaking negative narratives about a particular player. And, I remember watching because when I retired, I didn't like how my career ended. So I didn't watch football for like 2 years. And then when I started watching football again, it was sort of like Steve Spurrier. Like Steve Spurrier would always throw his hat. So I'm yelling at the TV, and my wife was like, "Why are you yelling at the TV? You know they can't hear you, right?"
Yeah, yeah.
And she's like, "Well, you know what? Instead of yelling at the TV, why don't you do something about it?" Right? So the first step was getting into media, and I didn't want to touch media because the New York media made me hate it, right? And the way that certain people who cover the game, they made me hate it because once again, quote me correctly. If I say something, hold me accountable. But don't misconstrue something that I said and you toss it out to the audience and they go like, yeah, Nick Ferguson said this because when I was in New York City, I was asked a question about our then offensive coordinator, Paul Hackett. Our team, we had played a game and on none of the phases had played well, offense, defense, and special teams. So I was asked a question, well, you guys didn't win today, and what was the reason? I just said, we were terrible on all three phases of the game. Offense, we couldn't move the ball. Defense, we didn't stop anyone. The only thing that ended up in the New York newspaper, Nick Ferguson said that the offense, Paul Hackett's offense, struggled. So I was called into the coach's office like, what did you say? And why would you say that? I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. That's not what I said. So that reporter who wrote that article, when they came into our locker room, I would never talk to him again. And that was one of my things. It's just like report the news as it is. And everyone is so thirsty to have, their video go viral, their article be the top article. And I'm like, is it worth sacrificing, your ethics for a viral moment? But then everyone has a negative thought about you. And I'm like, no. And I know we're all in this business to make sure one, we build our brand and we make money, right? We all trying to do that. But I think there's a unique way to do it where you present the facts as they are and you let the audience, weigh in and make their determination. But you have to present it as it is, and being so frustrated and angry and looking for an outlet, I say, you know what? I have to get involved, right? And I'll tell you the first thing I did because I used to pull up my computer and I would listen to stations all around the country. And when someone would say something that I feel that I have an opinion about, or that they're not telling the exact truth about it, I'll wait for them to give the call-in number, and I called.
Yeah.
And I'll tell them, that's not true. You're not presenting the facts the right way. And I would put people on blast, and then, things just started opening up and working for me. And that's kind of how I got into it.
Mhm. As a player, did you try to tune out the media, or was it kind of on in the background, you heard it, or were you just completely offline? I don't want to hear what people are saying. I'm going to play my game the way I know.
No, I welcomed it because everyone has an opinion. That doesn't necessarily mean that their opinions are right. Like, that's the one great thing about living in this country is freedom of speech. But like I tell my kids, it's a freedom of speech, but it comes with consequences, right? So you are capable of asking me any question. You can make any statement, and even if I don't speak to you, right, there are people who have written articles because I didn't speak to them. And that article was something negative about me. Hey, you know what? Do what you want to do. I'm going to do what I want to do as well. I'm not going to tell you how to write your article. Don't tell me how to play football, right? So that was kind of my working relationship. Then also for me, I'm all about communication. If you are open to talking to me, we can remedy any type of situation. But if you don't want to talk to me, then okay, fine. But for me, I was all about controlling my own narrative. And I was willing to stand there and take the brunt of a mistake that I made in a game. And I was also there when things went well. And I'll tell you that there were players who would only talk to the media if they had a good game.
Mhm.
If they didn't have a great game, they would hide in the training room, they would hide in the bathroom, anywhere they can hide so they didn't have to face the media. But no, I'm about facing the music. And and I was willing to talk to anyone.
Mhm. Well, like you said, it's all about relationships, players, reporters. I mean, that's what media is built around. Another thing you're doing is you're a Heisman Trophy voter. Can you break
Yeah.
down kind of how you got this role, the responsibilities, kind of process of it? And then for college football, do you have relationships with these guys who are trying now to make it into the NFL?
Well, the great thing about it, when you play for a long time, you develop a lot of relationships. So I get a chance to talk to, coaches and, maybe strength and conditioning guys that I built relationships with, especially when I want to find out details on a particular player. I see him on Saturday and the way that he plays. How does he interact with everyone else? Is he a team guy, or is he somewhat of a me guy? And the way my Heisman vote, happened, when you've been in the business for a while, and once again, you get certain connections, someone just called me. They say, hey, listen, they like what I was doing. And they said, well, hey, would you be interested in being a part of college football biggest moment in the Heisman Trophy? And I was like, hell yeah, right?
Yeah.
So, and I did. I mean, I love football, and I watch it, every weekend. And when you think about what the Heisman is, see, the Heisman is given to one single player, right, and mostly quarterbacks. But the Heisman, in my opinion, that's a team award because if that team, if that offense, if that quarterback doesn't play well, you lose votes. If your defense doesn't play well, you lose votes because when you start to try to differentiate between who's going to win the Heisman and how you break it down, you look at that quarterback's wins. Is that team, undefeated? How many games did they won? Like John Mateer, who plays for Oklahoma, he was a Heisman front runner. Now, he came back too early after surgery. He damaged up his hand in the last game. He didn't look that well against Arch Manning in Texas. So that is going to have a profound effect on how voters kind of look at him moving forward. But it's a very unique process. You have to watch every single game. And once again, if you live on the East Coast, sometimes you got to stay up late to watch those games on the West
Very
Coast.
late.
Yeah, very, very late. And that's why when you think about years ago, when you had the Pac-12 and Christian McCaffrey, there were a lot of voters on the East Coast that didn't stay up to watch those games. So that affected the way they voted. But for me, I try to watch and consume as much as I can. So I want to know as much as I can about each individual inside and out before I cast my vote. Oh, but I also tell you this, people know that I have a Heisman vote, and they would always try to ask me, "Hey, who you leaning more towards?" I won't tell them.
Yeah.
And my own wife ask me and I won't tell her. She's like, well, who am I going to tell? I was like, I don't know. So that's why I'm not telling you.
Hey, secrecy. It's an honor to be able to pick a Heisman. So
It's a code. It's a code.
nothing.
Yes.
Yeah, well, I have to shout out Travis Hunter because I'm a buff. So obviously he won the Heisman last year. I have to give him a shout out. Another question I wanted to ask you is you played alongside one of the best defensive backs in the NFL, Champ Bailey. If you don't know him, go look him up. You're gonna there it is right there. Tell us about a cool moment you shared with him. I know, on the field's great, but you guys build relationships together. What's a cool moment that you've shared with him?
Well, the biggest thing about Champ is a very quiet individual. And as talented as he is, you would think he would be more vocal. He would be like other guys. Hey, look at me, look at me. He is one of the more, team friendly guys I've ever been around. And he was always encouraging. So there's one moment that we have agreed that we would never really talk about is the interception with Tom Brady, right? We would just let that be and let that marinate. But there was one game we playing against, I think it was the Houston Texans, and I think Derek Carr was the quarterback, and Andre Johnson was the wide receiver. So we had a defense where we can mix and match things up depending on where Andre was on the field. So Champ and I decided to do that, to just kind of totally go against what our coach wanted us to do, and just kind of do our own thing. But the biggest thing was as long as he and I were on the same page, that was the only thing that mattered. And when you play with a guy for a period of time, you have what you call nonverbal communication. That meant as though we never said a thing to one another throughout the entire game. All we did was look and turn our head to the side, and we knew what the other person was thinking. And we kind of took Andre Johnson out of the game. And one time we were coming to the sideline, and our DB coach was kind of yelling, and he just aimed his anger at me and not Champ because he was just like, hey, that's not what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to do this particular thing. And then Champ just out of the blue told him, shut the fuck up. Right. And it was shocking. Excuse me for saying that, but maybe you edit that out. I don't know. But
Yeah, got it.
the reason it was so shocking because Champ wasn't as that vocal. And that was the first time I really heard him vocalize something, and he vocalized it in that particular way. And for me, I was like, okay, he's about that life, right? And I knew it was about that life based on the way that he played, but also in that moment, knowing as though he and I decided that we were going to do that on the field, that with the coach yelling at me, he decided to step in and speak up on my behalf. So I'm sorry for the swear word.
Good, you're good. For you as a player, were you a vocal player? And if so, did you get into what's a super heated argument you've gotten into with a wide receiver? And then how did you respond back to him?
Well, for me, I wasn't the type of player to do all that talking because I had two coaches. I had George O'Leary in college and Bill Parcells as a young player with the Jets. And their whole thing is that you don't really have to talk. Those individuals who have to constantly talk, they're trying to hide or make up for something. They lack, validation in themselves, so they have to continue to talk to kind of talk themselves into a game. And for me, here's the most bizarre thing. I play defense for a living. They paid me to hit people. So I didn't think it was wise when an offensive player would talk trash. And I'm like, do you realize what you're doing? Right? I could bring physical harm to you, and they're not going to file assault charges against me. Right? So I never talked with my mouth. See, those two guys, Parcells and George O'Leary, excuse me, always taught me to talk with my shoulder pads and my helmet. So
Mhm.
if you talked, I'll listen and I'll take a mental note of it and I'll go 86. It was almost like it's like the water boy and Bobby Boucher. That's kind of how that was kind of how it was. And the guy who talked the most, Steve Smith Sr., right? When he played for Carolina, man, he was just yapping, yapping, yapping. And I'm like, okay, right? Let me silence him. And that was the best way to silence people who yapped a lot. But Steve Smith Sr., even though he yapped a lot, he was a hell of a player. And I love playing against guys like that. And I welcome that because he's going to continue to talk, whether it's an explosive play for 40 yards or it's a 5 yard slant. He's going to continue to talk. And that's the thing that drove the competitiveness in me and other players that I played with.
All right, well, we're running out of time here. Last question for you, and you can think about it for a second. In 3 words, how do you want people to remember you as a player?
Oh, that's easy.
All right.
Yeah, that I love the game. I love the fans. I sacrifice myself for the game. And the easy one, I was a dog, right? I was a dog. I attacked everything and every play the same way. And I'll tell you this, here's a bonus. See, some of my teammates didn't appreciate the way that I practice, and they didn't really appreciate the way that I played. The reason being because the way that I practice was just like the way that I played. Champ Bailey did the same thing. And I was full speed the entire game. And being full speed, that means that someone's going to get hurt. And during my course of my career, I've hurt a couple of my teammates. And if we were in the game and someone was in my way and I was trying to make a tackle, I'm going to push you down to make that tackle. So here's what our philosophy was on our defense. It was either get down or lay down. Simply put, get the hell out of the way. So
I,
yeah.
I love it. Thank you again for talking with me today. Again, this is the Loop Sports Podcast. We're going to have plenty of guests on, but special thanks to Nick Ferguson for being our very first guest on this podcast. And of course, go Broncos.